All right. I don't know if you guys know, but Kamran has been a sailor. He studied about merchant navy. Merchant navy, was that it, right, Kamran?
What was the last part? I did study shipping.
Yes.
I was an engineer, yes, and I
Okay, so
studied.
you were in the shipping line, and I was just focusing on that because I have the first question for you about the same thing, because we're seeing most of the shipping routes are. I mean, if you consider you have been in the line, you know better, but as far as an outsider, I can see the Central Asia, the Middle East part of the sea routes are pretty considered pretty dangerous. So can you tell us something just to start with? Why is there so much tension regarding the shipping routes exclusively? And so we can get an idea about what the whole oil situation and the whole money and the economic process involved in the whole Middle East and Malaysia as a whole region affects. So you can go ahead.
Tensions. Which tensions do you mean? Like in Middle East, it seems to be fine now. I
Right.
mean, it seems to be. They had problem with Qatar
Mhm.
when back when Trump was president, and Saudis and USA kind of ganged on Qatar, and they started banning them. They couldn't
Uh-huh.
fly over, like they didn't let Qatar fly over Saudi. They were basically accusing them. They had some accusations, but but you know how those accusations work, right? Like if they don't listen to your agenda, they don't follow your agenda, you basically accuse of them of something, and that's basically how it works. They're gonna say, "Oh, Qatar is helping terrorism.
Uh-huh.
We this and data. This is our CIA investigation. We cannot disclose, but we know. So you know what? We put sanctions of Qatar. Like those kind of things happen. Um, I didn't like. I know this from because I used to back when I was flying from basically. I think I was flying to Tunisia,
Right.
Tunis, and I went to Qatar, and from Qatar I had to come back over Iran, make
Mm-hmm.
a big turn, and then come to Tunis because I couldn't go fly straight. So I came from Azerbaijan to Tunis, came almost back to Azerbaijan on a plane, and then it goes down to Tunis because Saudi Saudis say that hey, Qatar airplanes cannot fly over our land, basically our let's say aerial,
Airspace.
yeah, the airspace. So these things, and back then I asked the guys why was the case. The Tunisians, they said that there's some tension. But regarding to the shipping, the south is basically the only sensible road that
Right.
works all around the year because in winter you can't go. Not every ship can go over the north, the
Right.
Russian side, the Russian north, and because there's so much ice and it's not really, especially when there's like um, this warming problem that they say, the ice breaks off and you don't know where it's gonna appear. It's
Well,
just floating,
why I
and
was
that's
in, okay, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, and that's why they are using the south because one, there's a Suez Canal, you can bypass Africa. Two, basically there's a lot of countries there from where you can pick up another cargo. If you go south, it's basically just Russia.
Right.
I mean, if you go north, it's basically Russia, but if you go south, it's India, Bangladesh, all the other the Middle Eastern countries like Oman, Jordan, etc. All those countries, right? Then you can go to the Africa. Then from Africa, they call it the Cape of Hope. From there,
Mm-hmm.
you can go to USA and or just come back taking cargo from Africa to Europe. That's why they're using those south lanes. That's why where there's a lot of money there, and when there's a lot of money, basically, even if they don't have a problem, if they want a problem to appear, they're just gonna make it appear.
Well, at the end of the
Mm,
day, it's all about politics and money. But why I was
it is.
considering the shipping routes and the whole shipping line, why? Because we'll be talking about the gas pipeline next. And as you mentioned to me earlier as well, the major tension between Armenia and Azerbaijan was Turkey taking interest in the gas pipeline that is going to go to Europe. So,
That's
do
not
you
the
have
main.
any take
That's
on
not the
that?
main.
Yeah.
That's not the main one.
Okay.
The main issue with Azerbaijan and Armenia is basically this. Armenian government, with help of Russian government, have invaded Azerbaijan. There's a lot of data on there's a lot of factual data that Russians Russian soldiers were helping them firsthand. They were getting the tanks, they were getting the weaponry, they were getting support from Russia to push forward. Russia basically used Armenian government to attack Azerbaijan. It was classic situation where you bring up history,
Mm-hmm.
you make a elephant out of an ant, and
Mm-hmm.
you feed it into your own people, you fuel them up, and then you use that energy to do something from somebody who's going to pay you. That's what was happening. They used this unproven Armenian genocide because it was 19th century, basically like early 19,000s. They
19.
call it, yeah, early 19,000s, uh, I mean 1900s,
Yeah.
and they were basically saying that, oh, it's a genocide. In reality,
But
you can
we,
you can
you
call
know,
every war a genocide by that logic, right?
well, yeah.
It was a
But
war.
coming to the next question, we've been global citizens all along, right? The whole process of us being exchange students over in the United States was about globalization. So with the whole military powers on the rise, you see Myanmar, you see nationalism over in Europe, Britain. You come back here in Australia, or you see, the Middle East with Azerbaijan, Armenia, Turkey, Russia. It's like everywhere nationalism is rising. So, as a global student, as an exchange student, do you think that the whole process of globalization has been hampered? It has been a failure after so long process.
Now, I mean, globalization is really driven by the economic market as well, right?
Right.
That's what was pushing it.
Mm-hmm.
There's global trade. Hey, I can get the TV. My country doesn't make a TV, so I gotta get it somewhere. Okay, these
Right.
guys start sending, and then somebody from here thinks, hey, why do I trust him? Maybe I should go and see if that's the real price that they're asking me. So now people start traveling. Then there's like travel agencies, promoting all the travel videos, and people want to travel. Nationalism is it's just human nature of comfort, right? Everybody seeks comfort, and when there is too many people around you that is not with the same mindset of yours,
Right.
you start being conscious of your surroundings. You're so used to be lazy, acting out of habit, but now you can't do it because not everyone around you is the same people. It's different people. If you, let's say, you have to, adjust your walk, maybe you have to adjust your talk, especially if they're starting to become not a minority but almost like, in some cases more than your kind. So
Mm-hmm.
people are seeking comfort, and when there's people around them that they don't trust,
Uh-huh.
and let's be honest, you cannot trust somebody that doesn't act like you. That's just human nature. That's how we, that's how we deal with things. I mean, not everybody understands that the globalization is going to happen, right? All we can do is prepare. and the question is when. It's not if. I think it's happening. It's just there's always, when there's a trend, there is always a pushback, and
So you think nationalism is just like a temporary thing right now in the
it's
world?
just it is. I mean, what are they gonna do?
Right.
How are they gonna stop it? How are
Right.
they gonna stop it? The reality is some things are cheaper elsewhere.
Right.
The
No doubt about
reality
that.
is the world market demands it. The planet Earth demands it. We can't just stay in our country and not listen to other countries and just pollute the universe, right?
Right.
You are gonna get you're gonna get exposed to the world in
And
any shape or form.
everyone has to
Even,
come to the negotiation table someday.
yes, North Korea is a classic example. They tried. I
Yeah.
mean, hats off. They tried. Not the best methods.
And not the best man to try with, but still.
Not the best man to try. I mean, but hey, they tried, and the whole world was like, you know what? We're not having it. If you're
Yeah.
trying to make a nuclear bomb, okay, now you're crossing the line. We are fine with you as a, let's say, standalone country, closed off, as long as you're not a threat, right?
Right.
We're fine. But if you are in some shape or form has a power, even if you won't use it, a power to do a minor damage, no, that's not gonna fly. And
So,
that's the reality of the modern world.
so coming down to the tricky question here. The the Azerbaijan government and the Armenian government, they both tried to talk their way out of this resolve, right? They've been trying to discuss, or I'm not, I do not have the total clear idea about it, but as far as I've read about it, they've tried to discuss it through diplomatic means. But at the end of the day, today we see that military resolve was the final resolve, right?
Yeah.
So, do you as a citizen consider it a failure of the government to, have a diplomatically peaceful resolve to a small conflict?
Well, the thing is that this whole conflict was fueled, supported by Russian government.
Right.
So Armenia, even if they want to be rational, they can't. They won't let them.
So,
Russia supplies Armenia with everything. They have. It's basically, you know how China takes all the ports away from the African countries. They give
right,
them a lot of credit.
right,
They give
right,
them
right.
so much credit that they will never pay back.
It's a debt trap. Yes.
And then, yeah, and then they're like the credit trap. Yeah, and then they're like, hey, I can't pay back. What can I do? It's like, yeah, give me
Give
the
me the
port,
land. Yeah. Yeah.
and which is the only entrance to that country, the only sensible entrance, because all other roads are screwed up. They don't have proper road infrastructure in all of
Right.
the countries of African region. So they just take that their only hope. They take it away, right?
Right.
Now you become a financial slave, right?
So
Armenia,
you're actually saying that
whether
Armenia is a financial slave of Russia, and it is
it
old
is,
because
it's not a dog. They know it. They tried to go against their government many
so
times.
on
They
the other
tries
side
to
of the
do
border
they
in
try to do
Armenia,
meeting.
I've been hearing these stories about Armenia as well, because their people are having an uprising against the government. They're like blaming the government that
Yeah,
you're all sold off to the Russians and you've taken this resolve.
I know.
And
They know it. They know what's going on. I mean, I don't say that I have a perfect government. I
right,
know the fault of my government as well. But I'm telling the truth that they have. If they
right,
even want to have a conversation, they won't
mm-hmm,
be able to, because Russia uses the Nagorno Karabakh
mm-hmm,
in order to influence Azerbaijan politics. So
right.
in a way, they have influence over us through Nagorno Karabakh, right? The same influence, the same, if not a bigger influence
Uh-huh.
that Russia has in Armenia, right?
Right,
So
right, okay.
it goes both. It's all super political, really. It's just
Too much
if you
politics
wanna
involved.
if you want to be like rational, feel free to.
Hi, bro.
But is it
Hello. He's coming in. Hi. Say hi.
hello?
That's fine. Hi.
Yeah, you can try to be rational in this
Right.
situation. Just if you see what really goes on, it just won't work. It's just politics, man. It's yeah, and it's not a failure. It's
Mm-hmm.
just when there is a third guy. There's
Mm-hmm.
two small guys are fighting, and then
Right.
there's a third big guy, right? That will never let you talk, right? They will never let you talk.
All
What else
right.
are you gonna do, right?
Yeah, perfect analogy. All right, thank you, Kamran. We got those answers. That was really enlightening. Coming to Renee. All right.
Mm.
Uh, I have my first question for you. It's a fairly easy one. How do you, as a common U.S. citizen, look at U.S.'s role in Central Asia with respect to its foreign policy? Like, as a common citizen, whatever you know about it, if you know about it, and what is your perception of USA in Central Asia or the Middle East?
Well, it's hard to know. I think the U.S. has lost a lot of credibility in the world recently. I think the U.S. as a superpower. I'm just watching. Kamran is saying about how Russia is using the conflict to gain what they want, and I think the U.S. is not any different.
Right.
I haven't learned a lot about these. I've been reading up in preparation a little bit, but my basic
So in
impression.
a way, to that point, in a way, like, do you see the veil of the good guy, US being the good guy, is coming off now? It's like USA has always been, we are for the democracy. We are, doing the good towards that region. We are necessary there. And now you telling us that it is no different than Russia for its interests. Do you think the veil is coming off now?
I don't.
Okay.
I mean, I've been told by many people I'm unusual, and knowing all of you guys, although I really didn't get to know Kamran really well.
We can vouch for him. He's a nice guy.
I'm sure. But what I see is in America, democracy is used as a division point. You know, the Republicans are more democratic than the Democrats are, and that's what the dialogue is. It's not even a dialogue. It's just monologues from everybody, and refusal to listen, which is what is happening everywhere in the world from my talking with the students I know. There's authoritarianism is on the rise, and the students who have had experience in the world and have seen more than their own small thing, they see it very differently from the regular people. And that is just as true in America. And a lot of people are invested in America is great.
Right.
And they don't want to hear that we have that our interest in any of these conflicts is economic.
We can come to the general population later. I'm just concerned about what is your point of view of USA being involved in Central Asia and Middle East. Your personal point of view as a US citizen. That's it.
My personal point of view is that the US is not any better than any other country.
Right.
We have, of course, more power and more money, but we don't have a moral high ground. Not anymore.
Right. That is what I was suggesting.
Right. There are countries we have benefited. There are countries we've benefited, and there are things that we have done in the past to better countries. But I think anybody can say that. Any country can say that. When they've had influence, they've benefited sometimes, and they have not at other times.
Right. Coming to the this is like a follow-up question only. But do you think these conversations like find their way on the dinner table ever for common US citizens? Like, what is their country doing outside America? I mean, anything, like whatever is going outside their borders. Do you find anything in common dinner tables being discussed over an occasion somewhere? Do you hear about these stories even?
I don't. I mean, one of the things I did as a coordinator in trying to find host families is I would actually knock on doors. And I was amazed. I was in Benton City, which is red, more Republican than not. And I was amazed at how many people told me that I was doing a good thing, especially trying, because I was very upfront about wanting to place Muslim students. And I thought I would get a lot of pushback, but what I got was a lot of compliments that what I was doing was a good thing. I never found a home, okay, but I got a lot of encouragement. And I think the average person isn't that polarized if they're not in a position of having to defend their point of view. But they still don't know what's going on.
We can have him in the discussion if he has a point of view.
Well, he can, but this in and out is disturbing me.
Okay.
So, but I don't think people discuss it over the dinner table either, because there was a lot, they just didn't know things. I found myself educating people a lot about what's going on. So I don't think it's a big thing. People are happy to be in their small little world with their small little concerns. And I am a person, I deal with the individuals much more than the overarching government things, because I have so little influence, but I see it. And
so when I talk about nationalism being on the rise all over the globe, it's partially because one cannot deny that USA does stand on the top of the leadership sometimes, and when the topmost country of democracy and globalization is suddenly switching towards Donald Trump and the whole idea of nationalism and closing their borders and everything, you think it trickles down to other countries and it influences other policies, other leaders to, copy that impression? We saw Boris Johnson for UK, we're seeing the same with Australia. And do you think now that the government has changed and the Democrats are back in the House, is there a dire need to push for globalization again, as the Democrats did with the whole exchange student programs and all the globalization initiatives? Or is that just a thing of the past now?
Oh, I hope it's not a thing of the past, because it's essential. We, as Kamran said, it's inevitable. The world is getting smaller. Look at where we're talking from. America, India, well, and Sayyara is in America too. I'm not sure where Kamran is.
Azerbaijan, yeah.
Oh,
he's from his own country speaking to us. Yes.
Okay, but look at where this is 4 people, and look at where we're talking from with each other.
Kamran also talked about economics being involved in the whole process of nationalism, and every country is now capable of producing their own goods. They have the technology, they have the know-how, and they don't need the influence of the Western world anymore. So why would nationalism not be on the rise, and why would globalization not rise?
For reasons which I as a human being don't understand, there are those that want control over larger and larger portions of humanity.
Right.
And so they, as Kamran said, Russia is using the conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan to further their own purpose. That's being done everywhere else.
Right.
I have considered that the destabilization of the Middle East is something that the Western world has encouraged in order to keep Muslims from uniting, because that would be a really scary power and a very big threat for countries that want their piece of the pie. So we've destabilized. And now I see destabilization being pushed in America.
So you see the wheel of karma rotating now and coming back to America?
I don't think it's karma. I think it's opportunity that they're trying to make.
Right.
I mean, we can call it karma, sure, but that's not the issue, really. There's a book I read called Confessions of an Economic Hitman. And it was an American, and he was employed by some large corporation to go into other countries and talk them into taking out loans they couldn't afford for infrastructure that they didn't need. And then the country was, yes, exactly. And it was distressing to read. I couldn't read the book, you know, and countries that tried to stand up to this, the leader that was trying to be ethical and do what was best for his country, suddenly there was a plane crash and he was dead. Yeah. And as I read this, I not only saw this on the macro level, but I saw it on a micro level. I mean, the US is burdened by debt. Debt runs this country, and people have to pay off their loans and they can't send their kids to school, for example. So it's happening on a micro level in America. I understand in other countries in the world that credit cards and loans aren't as big a deal, but I bet they are becoming more so, as everybody wants the TV or the computer that allows us to talk like this. And yes, it is driven by comfort, by greed, and by lies and deceits. And I just watched America almost tear itself apart this last election. And I think it's still tearing itself apart, only now I feel more comfortable because Trump is no longer in office.
But then while Trump was in office, we saw a lot of military threat being pushed around, the military leader of Iran being killed, and the whole North Korea issue. Like, there was a lot of military talks, right? A lot of threats passing around. Now with Biden in the House, we haven't seen that much of a change in the narrative, because they're still tough on China about the same thing, because they're worried that they'll lose the voter bank, right? So do you think like the Democrats now in the House would lead by example of inclusiveness and liberalization and peace talks, rather than, you know, conflicts and military threats like we've seen with Trump?
That would be my hope, but I don't think it's a very realistic hope, because before Trump we were involved in wars, and I remember after 9/11, one of the things I learned was that the Bush family was friends with the Bin Laden family. And I don't know if this is true or not, because you don't know what you can believe.
Right.
But if it is true, the Bin Laden, not Osama, who is kind of estranged from.
Right. It was a big family. We all get that. Yes.
Right. So, but they quietly got these people out of the country because they were visiting the Bushes at the time, apparently. Now, they could have done a lot with this during the election, the following election. And nobody ever mentioned the friendship of these rich American families with these rich Saudi families at all. And that told me very clearly that whether it's Democrats or Republicans, they're all on the same side. They have a different narrative to keep us all thinking we have influence.
Right.
But really, and even there have been studies, and even if 80% of the people want something, but the rich people don't, it doesn't happen, and vice versa. And I would guess that this is a dynamic that plays in most countries. It is the economic advantage to the elite.
Right. So
sorry,
talking about economics,
talking
about economics and politics going together, we know Azerbaijan was a very important country in the whole Silk Road that went through China, and China has been trying to revive it through the Belgian Road Initiative. And Kamran rightly said that they have been trying to get countries into debt traps in the name of Belgian Road Initiative. So the whole conflict between USA and China is also about influence. Who will be the world power now? And it all comes down to the Belgian Road Initiative. So as a common citizen again, do you even hear are you even aware about the Belgian Road Initiative?
I had to look it up because I had never even heard of it.
Okay. All right.
And I flatter myself that I am more informed than average on global events.
Right.
And I had not heard of it. It's not, but I can imagine that the US is very interested in preventing China from achieving success, because that would reduce US success.
Yeah.
Right. That perfectly makes sense. But that is what I was, concerned, because average citizens, they don't actually realize how much of their society is being influenced from the politics going outside their country rather than inside. The politics inside does not much affect us, because it's just us talking about our issues. It's just us neighbors talking about our issues. But then when it comes to other countries, we have no idea. We're just unaware about what the conflict is. And that is where it gets dangerous for us, because as normal citizens, today the country would be in a war and we would have no idea what the war was all about. It's just that. And that is where my concern lies with common citizens not discussing world politics. It's because every day these are the issues, these are the world politics issues that are influencing policies for Japan, for India, for China, for USA, for Europe. These are the main focus areas, and the world could be at the brink of a war, and we would have absolutely no idea about
it. I think so. We wouldn't. It'd be just totally surprising, and then it would be reduced to memes. And then everybody would think they understand the situation, and they don't.
Right.
Also, as a Azerbaijani, I know the size of my country. I know the influence of my country.
Right.
And I know that we can't influence much. So I kind of, when I look at the political stuff that goes around, the war that happened, I was like, yeah, it had to happen, because we couldn't influence anything anyway. If we could, not by much. It was just time. And it happened. As for Americans, the way they see it, if they see a problem, they're like, why didn't we solve it? Right? Because they have the power to do so, right?
And they have the money involved.
It's just a different way of thinking about what is going on. In USA, people are aware only of the things that USA, let's say, directly influences. But in reality, most of the things that US does is a reaction to what China or Russia does.
See, there is where the irony lies. I mean, the countries that does have real impact on world politics, their citizens care less about. They hardly even care about the whole thing. But those countries that are actually being affected by those issues are more concerned about politics outside their borders rather than inside. So that's where the irony lies.
I would like to say, I don't know if they could care less, but the news is not geared towards
that. Yes.
And you know, everybody's comfortable. We're the biggest and the strongest.
Right.
We don't have to worry about anything. We can play with these other countries. It's really distressing. But there is also an awareness that I, not as a country, but I as an individual, I don't have much influence.
Right.
I mean, I know about 100 exchange students. There's my influence worldwide.
Right.
Okay. And but as an individual, we're not any different from an Azeri or a North Korean.
Yeah, I mean, we're not here sitting, we cannot suggest any solutions and we cannot be on the negotiation tables, but I'm just concerned about just regular, ordinary citizens at least discussing about the topics, at least aware about, these policies and these.
Well, it's something I try to do in any way that I can think of, and there's not many takers. I wore a sari to church last Sunday, and nobody said a word. You know, and I keep trying to get people to engage. So yeah, no, I don't think. I mean, Bruce is here again. Okay.
Yes.
And now he totally studies all these things and he's really interested, but he can't find people to talk about it either, or they don't want to talk about it because neither of us has the well that, but also we don't agree with the comfortable illusion that America is great, and we I mean, we both fight that. And it doesn't go over well.
Right. Okay, so coming to Sayyara, all right. First, I would you've been vocal about the whole Nagorno Karabakh region and the whole conflict, written articles about it. Walk us through the history.
Kamran did. Oh yeah, and I did.
I don't want to walk through history.
I mean, just is fine.
I know it's a conversation that has been carried out by many people, and I really don't want to go in depth into that.
Right.
The reason why I wrote the article as a reflection was a reflection and a response to an article written by an Armenian student on my campus. So it was very much an individual reaction to what was going on, specifically of someone who was looking at the conflict and lived through the war, being outside of the country. So I found myself really anxious all the time because I was worried about my family and friends, because the internet was down and everything. So I had quite a difficult time understanding exactly what was going on based on the resources and the media coverage from Azerbaijan. And that is when it hit me. I realized I cannot make an objective judgment of what's going on based on one side, based on representation from one side.
Correct.
So my another Azeri friend and I, we started getting together, and he was signed up in Telegram channels of Nagorno Karabakh run by Armenians and all these Armenian groups. So we would puzzle together information from Azeri and Armenian sources in order to make sense of what was actually going on, trying to avoid as much propaganda as possible.
And what
And
did
I
you
think,
find out?
I mean, it's difficult. For us, it was, I guess, slightly easier because we were outside of the conflict zone. We were not that much fed into the energy. Like Kamran said, like people are fed with energy that then political powers use to move things forward. Being away from that kind of helped us to be more rational about our judgment. At the same time, for me as a student from Azerbaijan in a majority Armenian state, it was very difficult because I felt underrepresented, misrepresented even. That's why I wrote that article. Azerbaijan was only portrayed as an aggressor, as someone who is literally about to commit another genocide of the 21st century, which obviously was not the narrative or anything that was close to reality of what was happening.
I mean, they didn't even mention Russia, right? The Russia was the real player there. But they said nothing about it. And coming to genocide, how can you call it a genocide? Like they call every war a genocide. The one that they call the Armenian genocide that committed by Turks was a war. It was a war. That's how wars were back then. That's what people did. Like, have you not read the history? I mean, that's what people did. They killed each other. They still do. But they call it a genocide because it fits their narrative. Playing victim is just plays so good these days, and they make use of it, right? And no one mentioned Russia, which was more, let's say, demoralizing than Armenians saying their mysterious or mythical agendas. Russia was the real instigator. Those guys were basically the ones that fueled the aggression.
Proxy wars are becoming a thing because the big powers can't afford to fight each other. They have the weapons are too strong, so they do their skirmishes in small countries where you're not going to end up with nuclear strikes.
Yeah.
But Sayyara, you're in USA right now, and another question was that do you see USA being like totally indifferent to the topic, not even talking about it, not indulging into the politics of it?
I think it largely depends on the state where you are. Massachusetts, as I said, is like largely populated by Armenians. And in my university, there's like an Armenian club and like other things, while I was the only Azeri student, which is why I felt really mistreated in a way. But I mean, the article that I was responding to had this line where the author was quoting the words of a U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, who mentioned that U.S. should stay out of that Nagorno Karabakh conflict because it is a long-standing issue between two countries over a particular real estate. So I guess as Nagorno Karabakh in this quotation is a real estate that these two neighbors are fighting over, which in my opinion, it was good for the US to stay away from it because most of the time that wasn't the case in the past US interferences in other countries, because that could have escalated on a different level, which wouldn't be good neither for my family or friends or for Azerbaijan in general.
The reason why I was curious about it was, as Kamran and you agreed on it, that Russia was the main player here, and wherever we see Russia throwing in an influence, we almost most of the times we do see America countering it. But here they just let it go. I mean, they just didn't even bother about it.
I mean, as I said, I don't know if US has a particular agenda over it.
Right.
I mean, if you look at who was in the office and how their decisions were different and how their point of view varied, while Trump was more of an Azeri side supporter, more or less, or on a more neutral level. Biden administration is more pro-Armenian, and that is evident by their big push to recognition of Armenian genocide, which is
Also,
yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
I mean, it's about to happen almost, you know.
Also, regarding America staying away, they had elections that time. That's why they were having an elections, and Trump going for a war was not going to help him at all. So the timing of this war was perfect for everything.
So we can draw that conclusion from that Russia made the had the perfect timing to, you know,
not really. It's just Russia has a very little, like they have a very bad. They're in a very bad situation right now. They have all these.
At least here, I needed a Russian student here on the panel as well.
No,
but
honestly, like Russia was, it was like everything. It was like stars were aligned for two dogs to go in a war, right? And Russia has a bad reputation. It's in a bad state. They're trying to make friends with Turkey, who's our historical brothers. We don't distinguish ourselves from them, except with the let's say borders that we have. The border that you can pass now with just your ID, no passport. So we consider ourselves brothers, right? So Russia is trying to make friends with Turkey. Turkey supports Azerbaijan. Russia has a problem. They can't go to another war because they have been sanctioned down to earth. Their currency is floating somewhere with Adele in the deep, you know? They're rolling in the deep.
Okay.
And the US had elections. Trump can't do anything because another war means another bad reputation right before elections even. So Russia is out of the play. They were trying to do all they can. There were many factual instances that Georgia didn't let Russian plane fly over them because they were carrying weapons to Armenia. Russia was helping Armenia mid-fight and lying to our faces that we're not doing anything, right? So they were not directly doing anything. I mean, sending troops kind of stuff, right? But they were definitely helping them. Then you have we have good relationship with Israel because there is a large Israeli community in Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan is the country that has the largest Israeli community out of Israel. And so we have really good relationship with them, and so they were helping us. Israel, Russia, and Turkey, they also have their frenemy thing going on right now. So America was staying out of it because of the elections. That's why everything was basically and then there's pandemic. People are pissed already. Everybody, you don't even need to fuel nobody. You don't even need to feed nobody no energy. These guys were ready to fight, and they just went and fought. I mean, it is what it is.
I mean, I would disagree with that slightly because we literally, I can speak from my perspective that we fed the propaganda of Armenians being the enemy, and like with this negative imagery, with the war pictures from the war, from the specifically the Khojaly genocide pictures, literally all of us, at least
Yeah,
my generation,
previously, not I meant during the
as of
pandemic.
today,
No,
it,
now everybody's fired up. The war already happened.
yeah,
Everybody's fired up, of course.
So, do you think, Sarah? Do you think, like, being both of you being Azeris and neighbors with Armenia, do you think, coming down to the next question, do you see people to people normalcy being restored, or is the divide just going to get further away from here? Because the true fact is there has been a war and Azerbaijan has been a victor over it. Now, do you think tensions will settle down, or the nationalism and the whole Armenian propaganda and Azerbaijan propaganda versus each other is going to get bigger? Yes, Ren. Yeah.
Can I say this? A few years back, we had an Azeri student and an Armenian student in our group at the same time. And at the beginning of the year, both of them were really, really suspicious of each other. Okay, and as the year progressed, yeah, and this was before the war, but there's been several
You
wars.
see, I mean, when I was an exchange student, and we had people from Pakistan in our group. We as Indians in Pakistan, we do not see the people to people divide that much. We pretty much both criticize our governments for the whole doings, but
That's an
we get along because we share the culture, we share a part of the language as well, we share movies and everything. So we do have common interests, and as common citizens, when I was back in the US, we would just be treating each other just normal friends. We would not get into the politics and just blame it on the government. But
I don't know. I don't know really what the narrative was, but one was a guy and one was a girl, and there's also Christian and Muslim differences.
Right.
So I don't think I could be wrong, but I don't get the impression that there is as much of a shared culture between Azeri and Armenia, Azerbaijan and
so
Armenia.
there's
Right.
one more point to yours. They were exchange students.
Yes.
I mean, Flex is selecting basically the best of the best. They don't select a regular guy from the street. A regular guy's thinking from the street is massively different from mine. Same in Armenia. The regular guy in the street who will never hope to be a Flex student, his vision will be completely different.
Right.
And quite frankly, there is a difference in educational levels. There's a difference in the some of them didn't even travel out of their country, and that is very important no matter what people say. So that's
But
the
then
majority.
you would think that all of the education in the whole being above the society would reduce the tension, right? I mean, you would be more eager to listen to the other side, and you would be less suspicious. But as Renee said, both of them were Flex students, and they were both suspicious of each other.
Yeah, I mean, because that's what they have been fed for 20 years.
Yes. By the end of the year, they weren't suspicious of each other anymore.
Right.
But I am sure that this newest war has made it more difficult again.
Yeah. So what about you, Sarah? What do you think about that?
I was just gonna speak on that because I mean it is easy to in theory say that we should have more dialogues and build relationships between people in order to humanize the war narrative, which is what prevents us from communication. We don't see the individual lives and individual people, individual traumas which are caused by this war to both sides. Only once we recognize and see the similarities, we can go into a conversation.
So you'll be joining the Armenian group in your college now?
But on the other hand, to
Yes.
that, I did have an Armenian therapist And I have to say, it is more than just talking to somebody as a friend or somebody who you just want to talk to. This is your doctor who deals with your mind. And I was aware of her ethnicity from the first email I got, and I had 5 meetings with her or so, and our relationship progressed from our first call to the last one by my openness, by me
opening up to her.
Opening up to her. So it happened so that first time we only talked on the phone. Second time, again, we only talked on the phone. Third time, we had a Zoom but no video call. And fourth time, we had actually on Zoom.
It was a slow process. It was a carefully constructed process
of building trust, basically. You know, that's to the point of like being suspicious of each other. But then that is when I realized how much of a shared culture we had. We had shared culture, shared mentality in terms of like family relations, in terms of man to woman relations, ideas about government. And that's when it really like settled in for me that, oh my God, we are not that different, in fact. Of course, we have the differences, but I mean, we live so close to each other.
And that was what my point was with us also being India and Pakistan. They're totally a Muslim country. We do not even portray them as a democratic nation. They are military powered, but that's all on the top level. That's all government stuff. But when it comes down, yes, their religions are different and the culture is different. But when it comes down to us being neighbors, we share the same geological space. We're not that far away from each other. So most of our upbringing historically has been the same. So it's not that much of a difference as it seems from outside the border.
And yeah, what I think is going to be difficult though is the differences of people within their own community. Like Kamran said, the flex students might be more open-minded to going into this kind of conversations despite the level of discomfort. However, regular people on the street who never travel outside of the country, who don't have that third eye or third perspective, especially those who lost their loved ones to the war, I don't think they will be that open to have such communication with the other side. And the same goes for the other, for Armenians. Who's gonna try to talk with a representative of a nation who killed your father, your brother, or somebody like that?
The Armenian student that might have been part of this conversation, she said she wasn't sure she could face anyone who was Azeri after this war. And
that in itself is a strong statement.
Yeah, and I think she'd still be willing to participate at a time that worked for her, but it was hard for her. And she's thinking about the common people. They're thinking about their father that died, or their cousin, or their friend. And economics are just not part of the equation anymore. It's very deeply personal.
It's very emotional now, yes.
Not on the individual level. And in terms of healing, one thing that I see as a big problem, specifically from Azeri side, is the language that goes along with the portrayal of the war and the results of the war. As an educator, language, every single word I understand can really change either one's mindset or not. influence strongly, because the words are like in Azerbaijani, we have a phrase that a word can be more sharp than a sword. So going back to that, I do not like to hear the political powers referring to themselves as victors.
Right.
That means the other side is losers. And nobody likes to be called losers. Yes, if they say that this is a conflict that's now resolved, let's
Mm-hmm.
not use that aggressive language.
Right.
That is just embedding more aggression and
Mm-hmm.
just nurturing that further.
Uh,
But
Could I,
our president also is the same person who said we are going to create opportunities to coexist with Armenians. Then there is this duality that regular people will have hard time
Uh-huh.
dealing with.
Sure.
could I say too that as someone ethnically German,
Uh-huh.
and therefore the losers of
Uh-huh.
the World War II, right?
Right.
Um, as I've seen the ramifications, as I've studied the family history and learned how these things are going, and seeing that even 3 generations later, all the deep damage that has come from a war that was how many years ago now? 70 years ago.
Right.
Um, I don't know how to fix that. Germany is trying really hard to take responsibility for the things that were wrong, that they did wrong.
Uh-huh.
But the damage is immense and it is long, long, long lasting. And how an individual may heal, but how does a country heal, especially when you have the leaders using words like victors and losers and enemy,
Right.
and
Yeah.
instead of
We
people?
can see that. We can see that happening in real time right now as the Israel-Palestine conflict increases by the day.
Oh yeah,
It's-
and the war that I am most familiar with is in Yemen.
right.
And you know, just watching, there is a huge, huge divide between the people, even people who are not flex or yes students, you know, but who just have to live the life. There's a huge divide between them and the leadership that wants the power or the economic gain or whatever purposes that are not purposes of peace and prosperity for the majority of the people.
Right. Okay, so coming to next questions, I think we've already spoken about them. We've already talked about it, but I would still go ahead and hear out Sarah's point of view because we saw Turkey and Russia being greatly involved in the peace talks and the resolution to the conflict. Why do you think? I mean, we heard that Russia has an influence over Armenia, but I'm talking about both these countries. And were the two countries, were Azerbaijan and Armenia, totally incapable of resolving their issues themselves, or it's just like Cameron said, the big player doesn't let anyone else talk, and they were just pawns in the big whole game.
Yeah, I mean, I think mostly I would agree with Kamran
Mhm.
on his point of view about this question,
Right.
because I think the two countries could have come to some kind of resolution on their own,
But they did not get
because
to talk to each other.
thinking about economic advantages of these two countries collaborating would be much greater than them fighting. But even in our conversation earlier the other day, we talked about Russia and the Russian almost colonial mindset that is still happening, and we see it happen across the post-USSR countries, in Georgia, in Ukraine, in Balkans, in Central Asia, where they still have these I guess points of pain that
Mhm.
they're using in order to influence the local politics. So I can't speak on the Turkey side
Yeah.
because obviously Turkey also wants to have a strong partner who's got economic advantages such as oil, and they can influence Europe using that with the gas and oil pipelines going forward. I think mostly the bigger countries are involved due to economic gains, but I am not particularly interested in that. Neither I read about it. I don't engage with that content.
Okay.
But I have to say, I was in the library the other day and I came across books that were kind of like gathered together newspaper articles from different times. I think starting from the early 20th century. And I got into, I got interested because I was like, oh, I wonder if they said anything about Azerbaijan in the newspapers back in the day.
Right.
So I went to the one, I think it was 1994, if I'm not mistaken. And this paragraph particularly caught my attention. It said about the Azerbaijani president at the time trying to resolve Karabakh conflict. And here is what the paragraph reads. So Ter Petrosyan in Moscow was a resident receiving Turkey's Minister of Foreign Affairs. And as one could expect, both these meetings pursued the same goal, a search for ways to settle the Armenian-Azerbaijani conflict. But Gaydar Aliyev's efforts to solve this problem peacefully are perceived by his political opponents, especially the radicals, as an attempt to once again bring Russian troops back in Azerbaijan under the guise of peacekeeping forces. And this is said in 1994, which is exactly what happened right now. And that scared me because I do not want Russian peacekeepers or Russian troops in any form or way to be present in Azerbaijan. So I don't know. I mean, going forward, no one knows what's going to happen.
Right.
But I'm hoping at least people can find ways to live with each other and influence the politics, at least from down up, rather than the people on the top trying to control the people on the bottom.
So this question next has been, again, as I said, has been talked about, but because this is the essence of the whole talk, I'll repeat the question, and I want all of your views on this one, starting with Sayyara. So this was a long-standing issue that was promised to be resolved through dialogue, right? But as global citizens, we clearly saw that even after decades of dialogues, only a military resolve could finally bring peace to the region. What do you make of that with respect to, the whole peace talks, diplomacy, and dialogues? I mean, is the use of force inevitable? Like, what's the point of peace talks then? Because at the end of 2 decades, 3 decades, it'll be again a war that will be resolved in conflicts.
Well, unfortunately, all the good things came out of wars. Historically, if you look back at it, in example of America, for example, America has done terrible things with Native people. There has been the genocide of natives and historical underrepresentation and segregation, slavery against all kinds of different people. But this is where they are right now. At least this is what I'm seeing, and I can use this as an example. And in other countries too, sometimes people have to overthrow a government to have a better government, and force and power is a very key factor in resolutions a lot of the times, unfortunately. But I'm not trying to discredit the importance of trying to have peaceful conversations, which can happen.
But you
But-
scored the point that at the end of the day, the military resolve is inevitable.
Depends.
I mean,
Peaceful talks in Azerbaijani case, Kamran, please back me up if this is wrong, but over 25-30 years of peaceful conflicts, peaceful resolution, the Minsk group that was established to manage the conversation just benefited from going from one country to another, not really sitting down for a constructive dialogue or coming to any kind of agreement. A lot of money was spent and just pointless. No one can return that time.
as I said, a member of Minsk group was sending weapons during a war.
There you go.
It should explain everything.
Yeah.
There was no peaceful talks. There was a show where Minsk group, which was the key player was Russia, right? Basically, the Minsk group, which is the key player is Russia, was steering things up. And for the show to the world, they were doing these talks, right?
Okay.
Because if they are proven that they are unsuccessful, they will delegate it to somebody else. If they delegate it to somebody else, guess who loses the power? Who loses the power if they delegate it to somebody else? Russia. So they were doing the theatrics of the peace talk.
So
it was a theater. It
so
was a show.
you guys saying that all these peace talks among countries, these are all just charades to, you know, get the real thing
In
done
this
under the
case-
table?
In this case, I don't know about other wars in other countries.
Yeah, but
In
haven't we
this
seen
case-
that? Haven't we seen this in a general idea? Like whenever there is a conflict all over the world, people talk about it. People talk about peace for 10 years, 12 years after a small conflict, maybe 20, maybe 30. But at the end, it results in a war, and then finally you sign a treaty. So my taking away would be like all these peace talks are actually just charades to get the real thing done on the table, so that the population, the general population, are not concerned about wars or what's going to happen next. They're just carefree that, oh yes, peace talks are going on. That everything's
I'm gonna
fine.
give you a good analogy on this one.
Right.
You know these guys that are behind the keyboard and they're acting tough and stuff. When you meet them in the real life, you just go to their faces and just tell them, hey, say the same thing again. And they fail
Right.
to do it
Right.
because they don't have it in them, right?
Right.
They don't have it in them.
Okay.
They have all the time to talk. They have all the
Uh-huh.
time to act. They can do whatever you want, right? But when they really comes down to it, they will sign the treaty right there and then. It's
Right.
always been like it. Armenia knows very well that they don't have the political prowess, they don't have military prowess, they don't have financial prowess to do anything, a minor thing to Azerbaijan. They know it.
Right.
But they don't do it because they love it. As I said, they do it because there's Russia saying, hey, I got you, homie, go. Right? And they started talking, right? For 25 years, this guy was behind the keyboard, messaging all these dirty words. And one day, their daddy was injured, couldn't help. Their other daddy was having a problem with the marriage, the elections in USA.
Right.
And guess what happened? The dog came and they said, hey, you know what? Remember what you told me back there? Back it up. This is it.
Right.
There was no peace talks. There was basically all this shouting and Russia. And trust me, if Armenia had their choice, they would not invade Nagorno Karabakh in the first place, because we were never the enemies, at least to that extent.
Right.
We were never the enemies. We lived together. My grandma's street, my grandma's neighbors in my city, which is in Azerbaijan. It was in Azerbaijan. It's not part of Nagorno Karabakh or the other areas. It's in Zagatala. It's next to Georgia.
Mhm.
People were the house that I live in Zagatala is built by an Armenian guy.
Right.
It was built by an Armenian guy. It's a pretty good house too. Not
Right.
gonna lie.
Right.
It's just their government were forced by Russia. They were promised. They were promised good things, right? They were really promised good things, and they used Armenian. It wasn't really many Armenians there. It was a lot of Russians. They basically, you know, it's like they basically took the logo of Armenia, slapped on themselves, and came. It was really actually, and Armenia allowed them to do it because they were promised good things. But what ended up happening is they drowned Armenia in credit in all these, let's say,
Debt.
they made them so dependent. Armenia doesn't make a single weapon. Every weapon they receive is from Russia. They don't have many things. Most of them is sent them by Russia. And trust me, if Armenia will try to produce them, Russia will be like, no, no. Now you are trying to be independent. Now you're trying to be independent. And same thing is Nagorno Karabakh. They're using Nagorno Karabakh to influence Azerbaijan. It used to be super effective. It used to be extremely effective, but Azerbaijan, thanks to oil, and it was not. It's not like we were incredibly innovative country. We flew to Mars or whatever. We didn't do anything. We just had oil. We were lucky. Okay, you have to be dumb in order to not have this much power while having oil. And yeah, they did it. I mean, they have all the, you know, they have Israel, they have the Turkey backing us up, they have Pakistan, which, and the Pakistan backing us up was really actually strange for everyone, but in reality Azerbaijan helped them a lot back. An Azerbaijani millionaire helped Pakistan when they were dying out of hunger. That's why they backed us up. It's basically them coming back. You know, we have a lot of business connections, like corporations and the countries. That's why we were able to detach strings one by one from Russia. We still have a big set of strings, but at least we're trying to cut them off. Armenia just embraces those strings because they know that there's no way out. No, nobody's gonna support them, and it's kind of you know, that's their own reality. They sold themselves to the devil 25 years ago, and now they're, and trust me, every Armenian hates Russia for it too. Probably hates their government for that decision as well.
Sure. All right. Yeah, Renee, you can do it.
Building off of that, I wanna bring up something that I've noticed about what Armenians can in fact do to Azerbaijani people, and that is not something that is connected to a military power or an economic burdening or whatever. It is a very psychological pressure that they put on, and that is made possible because more Armenians live outside of Armenia than in Armenia. And that has been historically the truth since the 90s. And I applaud this nation for the amount of research and academic commitments they've put out into escalating and leveraging the perspective of Armenians on an international level. That brings us to the very point I started with, that being outside of Azerbaijan was a big disadvantage because I saw that we are not portrayed as winners. We are not portrayed as good guys who were restoring an international
So
law.
this Armenian population out of Armenia was successful to propagate a narrative that the Azeris were the actual occupants and not
Yeah.
right. Okay, got that.
That has
And that
been
is because of their academic advantage over the years, right?
not only academic, but in the popular culture as well, which is more
Right.
known to people like Kim Kardashian and like there's all other influencers who are Armenian who spoke and sent donations to Armenian military during the war and spoke about it. But being in academia myself and having to find resources, reliable data to back up my judgment as an Azerbaijani person from third-party resources was extremely challenging. That is because Azerbaijan is a country where most people live in the country. So
Right.
they focused on their efforts within the national borders.
They might
And
even not be aware about what they're being talking about outside.
there's not much really investment into
Right.
academic research and its representation in other languages. And again, it needs, I had this conversation with my mom who offered an interesting point of view. And I don't know if it's true or not, but when I said that, you know, there's so much knowledge and papers and articles and books written about Karabakh and how it's Armenian and it has this history and culture and so on and so forth. She said to me that they're very smart because when they invest into research, they give money to other people, to like representatives and researchers from other countries to write about their issue.
And they
And
just write about one side of the story.
Yes, because they finance them, of course. When you look at research findings, you always question who the funder is.
Right.
And that's how we see more of outside of Armenian perspective as a reliable source than what Azerbaijan has to offer. So another way to finding kind of a more equal representation, in addition to changing the language around the war, would be to invest more in academic research of third parties on the conflict to represent Azerbaijani perspective.
Right. Okay. Renee, you had something to say. Yes.
Yes, I wanted to go back to the question of whether in the end military involvement is
Right.
the only way to a treaty.
Mhm.
And the conflict is between military involvement or talk.
Right.
But I would like to point out that you are not going to have military involvement without talk.
Right.
Okay, it is communication that leads to military involvement, which tells me that communication can just as easily lead to peace.
Right.
And it doesn't. So there is an interest somewhere in military involvement, and that seems to be the stronger interest because talking leads to both. And we forget that. We say that talking is this and military involvement is this. But either way, talking is at the base. And we forget that as if they are two different things. They are not. And so it is a way of thinking that leads us to a path that talks don't work. They absolutely do work.
But yes, more often than it's
they
like
are often, but
if you're talking to the person actually involved in the conflict, then yes, it will lead to peace. But then if you're talking to other people and not talking to the one that is concerned with, then it leads to war, isn't it? Because now other people have interests and they are talking rather than the two people.
Well, but my point is that talking is not a separate thing.
Right.
In either case, talking is the base.
Uh-huh.
And so maybe the individuals who are directly involved, it would lead to peace, and others who have economic or political interests, it might lead to war. The talking is the base. And so our concern should not be, is talking or military involvement more effective? Our concern should be, how can we make talking lead to the results that we want?
Right. And not military resolve.
Yeah, and that is a completely different question that isn't asked when I hear these kind of things. How can we use, because talking is the base for all of it, or communication. Okay, let's not just make it verbal.
Right.
So the question is, how do we use communication to get the results we want, not the results somebody else wants that doesn't care?
Yeah, that makes certainly a good concluding point. Well, I did not actually think that this conversation would go beyond 25-30 minutes, but it's been what, 1.5 hours, and we're still discussing. So yeah, this has been really enlightening, no doubt about that.
No, I'm glad to meet Kamran.
I think we actually had a road trip when I was in US together.
Yes, we did. You've actually met Kamran. You cannot just.
Oh yeah, I know that, but we didn't really connect.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
He's a superstar back in Azerbaijan.
Did
you know about that?
He's so good. Like whenever I see his videos, I'm like so proud. I'm like, and I would go around showing my people, like, look.
Oh, I didn't even know.
A little bit, not too much, not that much, but enough.
You have to start
a song with like after the war with a group of people, no?
Yeah, we did. Yes.
Yeah, what was it called?
Nefes Al Azerbaijan.
Yeah, Breathe Azerbaijan. Oh, that was really good.
Yeah, it was done by my friend. I was just singing. I wasn't really involved in the production, but yeah, it was a good one. Good initiative.
Yes. Humble celebrities here.
What?
Humble celebrities.
Okay.
What was the song about? Because obviously I wouldn't.
It was about after end of the war. It's basically okay. The idea behind the song was that with people who have been exiled, let's say, from those lands, who were driven away from those lands, some of them not even surviving. The ones that survived have ached for so long, they have suffered for so long because they were far from their house, from their homes, and Azerbaijan was basically split because it was taken by Armenia. And the song was about that. Now you can breathe, Azerbaijan, right? We can finally take a breath from all the let's say the suffering, because it's over. That was the song about.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. Now, this was a really good conversation. I really hope that we can find other common topics to discuss someday again. Probably not of war and head stuff, maybe something lighter. But yes, we should definitely do this again. This was really lovely. It was really good reconnecting with you guys, and we're on the verge of like having this 10 years. So
yeah,
congratulations to you guys as well. We successfully done a reunion, got that checklist done. Be virtual, but we did it because reunions do happen in 10 years of time. So yeah.
Alrighty, man. It was nice seeing you guys. Really, thanks for having me. It was fun.
Yeah.
I'm not a political analyst, but you get a perspective of a normal Azerbaijani, then I'm the guy.
Right, and we are just talking about normal citizens here. We don't want political debates. We just want common conversations happening. So this is really good. It was really nice seeing you, Renee, as well. Talking to you, Sayyara. It's really great. I just really hope we can find other topics to discuss. We really have so many topics going around these days. So we'll probably find time for other topics as well. And it doesn't matter if we are directly involved in the topic or not. We can just have a good conversation about it.
Yeah. Sure thing.
Yeah, well, if we think of any ideas, we'll send them to you.
Sure,
I actually have a suggestion.
Sure,
if you want to dive into regional conflicts, you should have Elena and Anastasia talk to each other as representative of Georgia and Russia.
Georgia and Russia have a conflict?
They were like friends when we were international students.
Oh, this should be interesting.
Yeah, because
probably
instigator
on political level.
Probably Anastasia is gonna be like, yeah, Russia's wrong, because she doesn't even live. She doesn't even live in Russia. She left it like long time ago.
Dubai, right?
I think,
but Russians are really patriotic, so I really doubt that.
I've met some of them that have been very rational, and they were like, yeah, it's just politics.
Okay,
what
so
can
that is
yeah.
Great,
but,
good. All right,
man.
I'll be ending this meeting now. It's been a lot late. I'm running late for dinner as well. I'm sure you guys also, I'm keeping you guys also busy on a work day, but I hope I find some new topic again and we can do this.
All righty, man. Take care.
You too, man. Bye. Bye.
Have a good one.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye.
This was wonderful.
Yeah. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.